Shake Shack is worth billions of dollars. Five Guys does something like $2 billion a year. In-N-Out has people lining up around the block. The entire premium fast casual burger category, fresh beef, made to order, a notch above fast food, worth paying a little more for, is one of the great restaurant success stories of the 21st century, a multi-billion-dollar idea that reshaped how America eats a hamburger. Fuddruckers invented that idea in 1979, decades before any of them, and Fuddruckers today has 44 locations. That's the impossible part, and it's why this story is worth telling. This isn't a chain that had a bad idea and died. Fuddruckers had the winning idea, the exact concept that would later mint billionaires. And it had it first, and it had it alone, with a decade-plus head start on everyone. The fresh ground beef, the bake-your-own buns, the build-it-yourself topping bar, the burger that was proudly better than fast food and proudly cheaper and looser than a sit-down restaurant. That's the whole Shake Shack playbook, and Fuddruckers was running it while Shake Shack's founder was still in grade school. It should have become the empire. It had every card, and instead it shrank from a peak of over 240 locations to 44, passed hand to hand through owner after owner, went bankrupt, got scheduled for liquidation, and now survives as a nostalgic shadow while the companies that copied it own the future. How do you invent the winning concept, get there first, and still lose? That's the question. And the answer isn't one villain or one blunder. It's a slow accumulation of the ways a great idea can fail to become a great company, starting with a founder who built it, proved it, and then simply walked away to go build something else. Start in San Antonio in 1979, in an old bank. A man named Phil Romano converted an empty bank building into a hamburger restaurant. Romano was from upstate New York, the son of an electrician, a restless entrepreneur who'd knocked around Florida and then landed in Texas in the mid-70s. Before the burger place, he'd owned, of all things, 2 karate schools. And he looked at San Antonio and had a simple, powerful thought that he'd repeat for the rest of his life. The world needed a better hamburger. That was the whole insight, and it was genuinely sharp. Think about the burger landscape in 1979. On one end, you had fast food, McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, cheap, fast, frozen, consistent, and fundamentally mediocre. Thin patties, industrial buns, a product engineered for speed and price, not quality. On the other end, you had sit-down restaurants where a good burger cost more and took longer and came with a whole formal dining experience you didn't always want. And in the enormous gap between those two, between the cheap, fast, bad burger and the slow, expensive, formal burger, there was nothing. Nobody was serving a genuinely high-quality hamburger in a fast, casual, affordable, come-as-you-are setting. Nobody had thought to put restaurant-quality beef in a fast food-style experience. Romano filled that gap, and he filled it with a concept that was, in retrospect, decades ahead of its time. He named the place Freddy Fuddruckers, the name a play on a fake airline that aviators joked about, chosen partly because it was funny and partly because its near-obscene sound was memorable, the kind of name you couldn't help but repeat. And the concept underneath the silly name was rigorous. The beef was never frozen. It was ground fresh, on-site, every day. Fuddruckers had glass-walled butcher shops right there in the restaurant, so you could watch them grinding the meat and cutting the steaks. The buns were baked from scratch on the premises, in a glass-walled bakery you could also see into. The patties were huge, 1/3 of a pound, half a pound, up to a full pound. You ordered at a counter, and then, and this was the magic, you went to a giant self-serve topping bar and built your own burger. Lettuce, tomato, onions, pickles, sauces, the famous warm cheese sauce, all of it, as much as you wanted, exactly how you wanted it. Then a cook called your name over a loudspeaker when your patty was ready. Everything about it was designed to communicate one message. This is real food, made fresh, right in front of you, and you're in control of it. The glass walls around the butcher shop and the bakery weren't decoration. They were the entire argument, made visible. Other burger places asked you to trust that the food was good. Fuddruckers showed you. It let you watch the beef get ground and the buns get baked, and then handed you the toppings and let you build it yourself. It was transparency as a selling point, freshness as theater. Decades before farm to table and watch them make it became standard restaurant language. And the build-your-own topping bar was a stroke of psychological genius that's worth dwelling on, because it did far more work than it looked like it did. On the surface, it was just a convenience. Get your own lettuce and tomato. But think about what it actually accomplished. It made every single customer the author of their own burger, which meant every burger was, in the customer's own mind, perfect, because they'd made it exactly to their taste. No more disappointment at a burger that came out wrong. You built it, so it was right by definition. It made the meal an activity, a little bit of fun, a hands-on ritual that a passive drive-through could never offer. It let a family of 5 each customize completely without slowing the kitchen down, because the kitchen only made the patty. The assembly was outsourced to the customer. And it delivered an incredible sense of abundance and value. Piles of fresh toppings, as much as you wanted, the warm cheese sauce flowing freely. For the price of a burger, you got a sense of generosity, of getting more than your money's worth, that fast food's rigidly portioned single slice of pickle could never match. The topping bar wasn't a side feature. It was central to why people loved the place, and it's telling that it's the single thing former customers get most nostalgic about. Not the patty, the topping bar. And Romano wanted the vibe to be grown up. This was deliberate and important. The family fast food places of the era were built around children, playgrounds, mascots, kids' meals, primary colors. Romano wanted something adult. The early Fuddruckers had a rougher, more industrial, more sophisticated feel. Exposed brick, neon, beer for sale, a warehousey roughness that said this is a place for grown-ups who take their burgers seriously. It was a burger joint that treated you like an adult with taste, not a parent managing children. That was a real gap in the market too, and Romano filled it. The advertising leaned into it. The early commercials had an adult, slightly irreverent sense of humor, aimed squarely at grown-up consumers rather than kids, matching the near-naughty wink of the name itself. Everything cohered around a single idea. This is the burger for adults who know the difference. The result was electric. People had never seen anything like it, and they loved it. A genuinely great burger built your way in a cool grown-up room for less than a sit-down restaurant and only a little more than fast food. The value proposition was almost unfair. Fuddruckers took off immediately, and the early growth was explosive. From that first converted bank, Romano built out to 20 locations in Texas within about 3 years. In 1983, the company went public, raising the capital for national expansion, and it started spreading across the country fast, one of the fastest-growing restaurant brands of the mid-'80s. Going public in 1983 is a hinge moment worth marking because it did 2 opposite things at once. On one hand, it was rocket fuel. A public offering gave Fuddruckers the capital to expand nationally, to build fast, to chase the enormous opportunity the concept had opened up. That's the upside, and it's real. But going public also changed what the company was and planted a seed of what would go wrong. A private restaurant run by its obsessive founder answers to the founder's vision. A public company answers to shareholders, to stock price, to the relentless quarterly demand for growth. It introduces a whole logic of expansion for its own sake, of hitting numbers, of the business as a financial instrument rather than a culinary mission. And it made Romano's own stake sellable, which is exactly what he began doing by 1985, cashing out his shares, loosening his grip. The IPO that fueled the rise also greased the exit, turning the founder's life's work into liquid stock he could sell and walk away from. The money that let Fuddruckers grow was the same money that let its creator leave. Both things came in the same package in 1983, and you couldn't have one without the other. Fuddruckers had, in the early to mid-'80s, exactly what a company dreams of: a differentiated, superior, genuinely innovative product in a wide-open market with no real competition, growing like wildfire with money in the bank and a decade-plus head start on an idea that would eventually be worth billions. If you'd looked at American dining in 1985 and picked the burger concept most likely to become a giant, you'd have picked Fuddruckers, and it wouldn't have been close. And then the founder left. This is the first crack, and it's the one that shapes everything after, so it's worth understanding exactly what kind of man Phil Romano was, because he was brilliant, and the specific nature of his brilliance is what doomed Fuddruckers. Romano was not an operator. He was not a builder of enduring institutions. He was an inventor, a starter, a creative, a man who has described himself as the mad entrepreneur and who has been called a restaurant artist, and both are accurate. Over his career, Romano would create more than 25 different restaurant concepts. 25. 6 of them became national chains: Fuddruckers, then Romano's Macaroni Grill, then Spaghetti's, Cozimel's, Rudy's, Eatsy's. The man was a concept machine, one of the most creative restaurant minds of his generation. But here's the thing about a concept machine. His gift was starting things, not staying with them. His entire pattern, his self-described modus operandi, was to have a brilliant idea, get it off the ground, prove it works, and then walk away, hand it off, and go start the next thing. The creating was the joy. The running, the grinding, the decades of operational discipline required to turn a hot concept into a lasting empire. That wasn't what he did. He was a painter, not a curator. He made the thing and moved on. So watch the timeline. By early 1985, just a couple of years after taking Fuddruckers public, Romano had already sold off a significant chunk of his stock and stepped back from daily management. And in 1988, he left Fuddruckers entirely to go found Romano's Macaroni Grill. His own explanation was simple and revealing. "I just felt I had done all I could for the concept." He'd built it, proved it, made it a success. And to him, that was the finished painting. He signed it and walked to a fresh canvas. And here's the proof that his instinct was, for him personally, correct. Macaroni Grill became another national success. So did other concepts he touched. The man was one of the earliest investors in the heart stent of all things, turning a $250,000 bet into millions. He billed himself as the mad entrepreneur, and he earned it, a serial creator whose whole life was the thrill of the new idea. For Phil Romano, leaving Fuddruckers wasn't a failure or a betrayal. It was simply who he was, a man who couldn't stop starting things, which necessarily meant a man who couldn't stay with any one thing. You cannot found 25 restaurant concepts if you insist on personally running each one forever. The two facts are the same fact. His restlessness was the engine of his genius and the source of Fuddruckers' abandonment, inseparably. And this is the thing that never sat right with me about the Fuddruckers story, because I don't fully blame him, and yet it's the original wound. Romano did nothing wrong, exactly. He built something great and sold it and moved on, which is his right and his genius. But the effect on Fuddruckers was catastrophic in slow motion, because it left the company orphaned at the exact moment it needed a committed parent most. A concept this new, this ahead of its time, needed a visionary to keep developing it, to protect the quality, evolve the model, defend the idea, nurture it through the decades into the empire it could have been. Instead, right as it was taking off, the one person who understood it in his bones handed it to strangers and left. The soul of the company walked out the door in 1988, and everything after is the story of a brilliant idea passed between owners who had bought a business but not a vision. Compare it for a second to the companies that beat it. In and Out stayed in one family for generations, fiercely protective, unwilling to franchise or compromise, obsessive about the same few things for decades, and it became a legend. Chick-fil-A, family-controlled, disciplined, patient. The enduring restaurant empires almost always have a stable, committed ownership that treats the concept as a lifelong mission. Fuddruckers had the opposite. a founder gone by 1988, and then a revolving door of owners, none of whom had built it, none of whom would die on a hill for it. The idea was better than In-N-Out's head start and just as early. What it lacked was someone who would never, ever let it go. And in the restaurant business, over the long decades, that turns out to matter more than almost anything. Because that's what happened next. Fuddruckers became a possession, an asset, a thing that got bought and sold. The moment Romano left in 1988, the ownership carousel started, and it never really stopped. Michael Cannon acquired the company that year. Then it went to Magic Brands, an Austin company that owned Fuddruckers alongside another chain. Then, eventually, Luby's. Then Black Titan. Owner after owner after owner, each one holding the brand for a while, each one with a different plan or no plan, none of them the founder, none of them possessed of the original vision, all of them treating Fuddruckers as a property and a portfolio, rather than a creation to be nurtured. Now, through the late 80s and into the 90s, the growth continued on momentum. The concept was so strong that it kept expanding even without Romano, kept opening locations, kept climbing, eventually reaching a peak of around 240 restaurants. From the outside, it still looked like a success story, but something crucial had changed underneath. The company was now being run by operators, not visionaries, people managing an existing concept rather than evolving a living one. And a concept that isn't being actively pushed forward, especially one that pioneered a category, is a sitting duck, because sooner or later other people are going to notice the great idea you proved and come after it, and when they do, you'd better be improving or you're going to get lapped by your own students. And that's exactly what happened, on a delay. Because here's the brutal irony at the center of the whole story. Fuddruckers proved, over the 80s and 90s, that Americans would pay a premium for a fresh, high-quality, made-to-order burger in a casual setting. It proved the market existed. It ran the experiment for 20 years and demonstrated conclusively that the fast casual premium burger was a winning idea. And then, in the 2000s, a wave of new competitors showed up who had learned that exact lesson from Fuddruckers' own example and executed it better. Five Guys, founded in the mid-80s as a tiny operation, exploded across the country in the 2000s with a tighter, simpler, fresher version of the same fundamental idea. Shake Shack emerged in New York in the mid-2000s and turned the premium burger into a cultural phenomenon and eventually a multi-billion-dollar public company. In-N-Out had long proven the fresh quality model on the West Coast, and a whole fleet of better burger, fast casual concepts flooded in: Smash Burger, BurgerFi, and the rest. Every single one of them was running, in essence, the concept Fuddruckers had invented in 1979. Fresh beef, quality ingredients, made to order, a step above fast food, a casual premium experience. They just did it in tighter, more modern, more efficient packages, and they did it with fresh energy and fresh capital and fresh brands, while Fuddruckers was a 25-year-old concept being run by its third or fourth owner. And the newcomers didn't just copy the idea, they refined away its weaknesses, which is the advantage every second mover has over a pioneer. Five Guys stripped the concept down. A tight menu, a simpler operation, no giant butcher shop and bakery spectacle, just great fresh burgers and fries fast, in a smaller space. Shake Shack took the premium burger and wrapped it in modern design, chef-driven credibility, and a hip urban cool that made it aspirational in a way a suburban warehouse never could be. Both of them looked at what Fuddruckers had proven. People will pay more for a fresh, made-to-order burger, and built leaner, sharper, more contemporary machines to deliver it. The pioneer bears all the cost and risk of proving a market. The followers get to enter that proven market having watched the pioneer's every mistake and build something that fixes those mistakes from day one. Fuddruckers had done the expensive, risky work of convincing America that the premium burger was worth it. The newcomers collected the reward. There's a cruel efficiency to how that works, and Fuddruckers embodies it perfectly. The pioneer is a teacher who doesn't get paid. It runs the 20-year experiment, absorbs all the losses of educating the market, proves the concept at its own expense. And then the students, having learned for free, open up down the street with better equipment and eat the teacher's lunch. Being first meant Fuddruckers had no competition for years, which was wonderful. It also meant Fuddruckers had no competition to sharpen it, no pressure to evolve, no rival forcing it to get better. So it got comfortable and static, right up until the moment a dozen hungry modern competitors arrived all at once, all of them sharpened by having studied it. First mover advantage is real, but it comes with a first mover curse. You build the road, and everyone who drives on it later goes faster than you, because you had to build it while they just had to drive. The pioneer had cleared the trail, proven the market, and then stood still, and the settlers who came after built better towns on the ground it had mapped. That's the deepest tragedy of Fuddruckers. It didn't lose because its idea was wrong. It lost because its idea was so right that it created the very category that would eventually swallow it, and it wasn't nimble enough or committed enough or well-led enough to defend its own invention against the competitors it had inspired. But there was a second problem, one baked into the physical body of the company, and it turned out to be just as deadly as the competition. The real estate. Fuddruckers' restaurants were big. Really big. The concept required it. The in-house butcher shops, the in-house bakery, the huge topping bar, the sprawling grown-up dining room, the whole warehouse-style footprint that made the early restaurants feel so cool and distinctive. That large format was part of the magic in the 80s. It was also, it turned out, an anchor chained to the company's ankle. Because a big restaurant is an expensive restaurant. Big footprints mean high rent, high real estate costs, high utilities, more staff, more to heat and cool and clean and maintain. Every single Fuddruckers location carried a heavy fixed cost just to exist, built into its enormous size. And that math got worse and worse as the years went on. In the early 2000s, rising real estate costs and the sheer enormous footprint of the typical Fuddruckers began to strain the business badly. The very thing that had made the concept feel special, the big, theatrical, warehouse-sized restaurant, became a millstone. The newer competitors, meanwhile, were often running leaner, smaller, cheaper formats, or riding the takeout and delivery wave that didn't need a giant dining room at all. Fuddruckers was stuck with a fleet of oversized boxes that cost a fortune to run in an era when the economics of dining were shifting away from exactly that model. The company's physical form, designed for the boom, became a liability in the grind. Someone later called Fuddruckers the blockbuster of the burger world, and the comparison is sharper than it first sounds. Blockbuster wasn't killed only by Netflix. It was killed partly by its own real estate. Thousands of big physical stores with big leases that became crushing dead weight once the world shifted. Fuddruckers had the same problem in miniature, a big box physical model, perfectly tuned to one era, that turned into an expensive anchor when the era changed. The warehouse that felt like the future in 1985 felt like the past by 2005, and cost a fortune either way. And there's a subtler point in the blockbuster comparison, one that goes to the whole shape of the experience. Part of what made a big Fuddruckers feel special in the 80s was that it was a destination, a place you went, a whole environment, a bit of an outing. The size was the experience. But American dining spent the 2000s and 2010s moving relentlessly toward the opposite. Speed, convenience, takeout, delivery, grab and go, the meal that fits into a busy life with minimal friction. A giant sit-down burger hall built around a communal topping bar and a leisurely grown-up atmosphere is beautifully suited to a world with time to spare and badly suited to a world of DoorDash and drive-through and eating in the car. The format wasn't just expensive. It was aimed at a way of eating that was quietly going out of style. Fuddruckers was a destination restaurant in an increasingly destination-averse age, carrying the cost of all that space while the customers drifted toward formats that didn't require it. The leaner competitors, built for takeout and speed and small footprints, fit the new world. Fuddruckers fit the old one and paid rent on the difference every single month. So, by the mid-2000s, Fuddruckers was caught in a closing vice, and every jaw of it traced back to that founder-shaped hole at the center. The concept was aging and no longer being pushed forward. The competition it had invented was multiplying and out-executing it. The oversized real estate was bleeding money, and the ownership was unstable, a series of custodians rather than a committed builder. The chain hit its peak of around 240 locations in 2006 and then began, in the words of one account, to deteriorate. Then the recession hit, and the recession did to Fuddruckers what it did to so many wounded companies. It didn't create the weakness, but it exploited it mercilessly. The 2008 financial crisis hammered the entire restaurant industry, and it hit Fuddruckers especially hard because Fuddruckers was exactly the kind of business a recession punishes: a premium, discretionary, higher-priced burger with expensive real estate at a moment when Americans were slashing spending and trading down to cheaper food. A pricier burger in a giant expensive building is a terrible thing to be selling when the economy collapses and everyone's counting pennies. The recession accelerated the deterioration that was already underway, and in April of 2010, Fuddruckers' parent company, Magic Brands, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And here's where the ownership story takes its strangest and most telling turn. In the summer of 2010, out of that bankruptcy, Fuddruckers was bought for around $61 million by Luby's. Luby's is a cafeteria company, a Texas chain of cafeterias, the kind of place known for steam tables and comfort food and an older clientele. A business about as far from a cool, grown-up premium burger concept as you can get and still be in restaurants. The innovative, once cutting-edge Fuddruckers, the pioneer of fast casual, was now owned by a struggling cafeteria chain that was itself languishing and closing underperforming locations. It was a marriage of two companies both drifting, and it did not reverse Fuddruckers' decline. Under Luby's, the chain kept shrinking. Think about how badly matched that ownership was, because it's the founder problem in its final, most extreme form. Fuddruckers needed, more than anything, an owner who understood the premium fast casual burger, who could see what Shake Shack and Five Guys were doing and respond, who grasped that the brand's whole value was being a cut above, fresh and cool and modern. What it got was a cafeteria company. Cafeterias are a fundamentally different business with a fundamentally different customer, a different economic model, a different sensibility, a value-oriented, older-skewing comfort food world with no particular expertise in the trendy, design-forward, quality-obsessed burger space that was eating Fuddruckers alive. Luby's didn't buy Fuddruckers because it had a burning vision for the world's greatest hamburger. It bought Fuddruckers to bulk up its own struggling operation to add revenue to a languishing portfolio. It was a financial move, an asset acquisition, the exact opposite of the visionary, mission-driven ownership the brand had needed since 1988 and never gotten. The orphan, having been passed among custodians for 2 decades, finally landed with a guardian who ran cafeterias. And a cafeteria company was never, ever going to out-innovate Shake Shack. The mismatch wasn't a detail. It was the whole story, crystallized. A pioneering concept in the hands of people with no feel for what made it a pioneer. There were self-inflicted stumbles along the way, too, the kind of unforced errors a rudderless company makes. In 2010, Fuddruckers enforced a no-weapons policy, telling patrons not to carry visible pistols inside unless they were security officials. The intent was reasonable. Management worried that armed customers might make unarmed ones uncomfortable and drive them away. But in gun-friendly states, and to gun rights advocates, it landed as an insult, and it sparked backlash and threats of boycott. It was a small thing, but it was the kind of small thing that a beloved, well-led brand navigates easily, and a wounded, uncertain one turns into a wound. The chain, already struggling, picked up customer backlash it could not afford. Through the 2000s, under Luby's, Fuddruckers continued its slow bleed. Locations closed. The footprint shrank from hundreds toward dozens. The brand that had once been the hottest thing in American burgers, the pioneer of a category now worth billions, faded quietly into a nostalgic memory, a place your parents loved, a chain you maybe hadn't thought about in years. A name that made you say, "Oh, is that still around?" And then came the ending that nearly was the ending. In September of 2020, in the depths of the COVID pandemic, which was devastating, exactly the kind of sit-down, dine-in, build-your-own, burger-at-a-shared-topping bar experience Fuddruckers was built on, Luby's announced it was liquidating, winding the whole thing down, selling off the assets, distributing the proceeds to investors. The plan was, essentially, to end Fuddruckers. By that point, the chain had shrunk dramatically, and the self-serve topping bar, the very heart of the Fuddruckers experience, was a public health nightmare in a pandemic, a communal station where strangers handled shared serving spoons, precisely the thing the moment had made unthinkable. The concept's signature feature had become, temporarily, its curse. Liquidation looked like the final chapter. But it wasn't, quite. Because in 2021, an entrepreneur named Nicholas Perkins, through his company Black Titan Franchise Systems, stepped in and bought what was left of Fuddruckers for around $18.5 million. Perkins had been a Fuddruckers franchisee himself. He knew the brand from the inside, believed in it, and became notably one of the few black owners of a national restaurant chain in America. He took a company that had been scheduled for the grave, down to a small handful of locations, and set about trying to revive it. Reviving franchising, reopening high-visibility urban locations, updating the technology and the marketing, betting that the world's greatest hamburger could rise again. That effort is genuinely ongoing, and it's a real fight. Fuddruckers today has around 44 locations and is clawing to grow, trying to re-establish a national presence in a burger market now dominated by the very fast casual giants that its own 1979 concept made possible. Whether it works is an open question. The brand has, as its new owner points out, weathered near collapse after overexpansion, a corporate bankruptcy, and a planned liquidation, and it's still standing, which is a kind of resilience. But it's fighting from 44 locations to reclaim a category it invented and then lost, against competitors worth thousands of times more, and that is a very steep hill. Here's what I keep coming back to, because it's the real lesson of Fuddruckers, and it's a hard one. Having the idea first is not enough. It might not even be the most important thing. Fuddruckers had the idea first, indisputably, provably first, by a decade or more. It invented the fresh ground, build-your-own, premium fast casual burger, the exact concept that Shake Shack and Five Guys and the rest would turn into one of the great fortunes of modern American dining. Being first gave Fuddruckers an enormous head start and a wide-open market and years with no competition. And it lost anyway because being first is only the beginning of the job. The rest of the job, the part that actually determines who wins, is execution, evolution, commitment, and endurance over decades. It's staying with the idea, improving it relentlessly, defending it against the imitators it inspires, adapting the model as the world changes, and having leadership that treats the thing as a mission rather than an asset. Fuddruckers had none of that, and the reason it had none of that traces all the way back to the founder who invented the brilliant idea and then, being the kind of genius he was, walked away to invent the next one. Phil Romano's gift was creation, and creation alone doesn't build an empire. Empires are built by the less glamorous work of sustaining, and Romano wasn't a sustainer, and after he left, nobody who owned Fuddruckers was either. It became an orphan concept, brilliant and parentless, passed between custodians, aging in place while its own children grew up and surpassed it, weighed down by the oversized body it had been born with, until a recession and a pandemic nearly finished it off. The most impossible rise and fall, the title says, and it is impossible in the specific sense that it should not have been able to happen. A company with that concept, that head start, that early success, should not be able to end up with 44 locations while its imitators own the world. But it did, and the how of it is the whole education. The idea was never the hard part. Fuddruckers proved the idea was a winner so thoroughly that other people got rich on it. Keeping it, growing it, defending it, believing in it for the long haul, that was the hard part. And that's the part Fuddruckers, orphaned early by the genius who dreamed it up, never quite managed. Somewhere tonight, in one of the 44, someone is standing at a topping bar, building a burger exactly the way they want it, pumping the warm cheese sauce over fresh ground beef on a bun baked that morning, doing the exact thing Phil Romano dreamed up in an old San Antonio bank in 1979. And it's good. It's still genuinely good. Still the world's greatest hamburger by its own proud claim. Still the thing that launched an entire category. The burger was never the problem. The burger was right the whole time. Fuddruckers just proved, the hard way, that in America you can invent the future, be completely right about it, get there first and get there best, and still watch someone else walk off with it if the person who dreamed it up moves on, and nobody who's left loves it quite enough to fight for it the way its imitators fought to steal it. And maybe that's the truest and hardest thing the story has to teach, the thing that lifts it above a single burger chain. We tend to believe that the best idea wins, that being right and being first is what matters, that if you build a better mousetrap, the world beats a path to your door. Fuddruckers is the counter-evidence. It built the better mousetrap in 1979, and the world did beat a path to its door. And then the world kept walking, right past Fuddruckers, to the people who'd copied the mousetrap and made it shinier. Ideas are not enough. Being right is not enough. Being first is not enough. What endures is built by people who stay, who love a thing enough to tend it for 40 years, to defend it, to keep making it better long after the excitement of inventing it has faded. Phil Romano had the idea of a lifetime and the soul of a wanderer, and those two things could not coexist in one company forever. He gave America the world's greatest hamburger, and then, being who he was, he left it on the counter and went to make something else. And a burger left on the counter, no matter how great, eventually goes cold. 44 locations. The pioneer of a category worth billions, down to 44, still fighting, still grinding the beef fresh every morning in the handful of kitchens that remain, still letting you build it exactly the way you want it. Still, by its own stubborn insistence, the world's greatest hamburger. It might even be right about that. It was right about everything else. Being right was just never the part that saved you.